Hey everyone, welcome back. We are at video 2 of this series in the GLP-1 sequence of YouTube videos. So my goal today is not about scaring anybody to pay attention to this video because look, that doesn't work. It doesn't make people want to do things. It actually will make you scroll faster, okay? And then you'll be the least likely person to take this serious. But I do want to tell you something that might feel a little uncomfortable, okay? Because the scale is dropping and everyone's giving you praises, they're cheering you on. Like, this is the stuff that becomes really easy to tune out. And I know because people have done it. And I know you're not tuning out because you don't care. But what I do know is that it's really hard to hear a warning when everything feels like it's working, when things are going right for you, when you're finally feeling like you're making some progress. And it's human. When something feels like it's working, we stop asking the hard questions. Like, why ask any questions at all? And here's what I want you to know is that muscle loss on the GLP-1s don't come with a siren. They're not like, woo, woo, guess what? You're losing it. No, it's quiet. It's silent right up till the day that it's not, okay? So my goal for the next several minutes, I don't want to be right about this later. I don't want to be the I told you so. It's funny, I hear that from my kids all the time. I'll tell them something and then they'll go do whatever. And then they come back to me and go, why are you always right? Okay. It's not about being right. It is about knowing how the body works. It's knowing about physiology. It's knowing about what comes next. So you lose muscle. It is harder to fix later while it's lost. It is so much easier to work on it now, to prevent it while it's still easy, okay? So here's what I watch play out all the time. It's the pattern that I see over and over and over, right? It is someone starts a GLP-1 and the weight comes off and you're feeling amazing for good reason, right? Not begrudging you that. Somewhere along the way, though, someone mentions muscle. Maybe you hear protein. You're for sure hearing the protein conversation. I know that. It's everywhere, right? Or they're talking about resistance training. And maybe you're thinking about it like, I should probably do that. I don't know. And then life happens and the workouts don't happen because, again, you're feeling good. And maybe the protein's not happening because, I don't know, maybe no one really said it loud enough. But that's the trap, right? It's not that people don't care about your health. I know you care about your health. I hope, right? But it's that muscle loss is quietly invisible until it's not. You don't have pain. You don't have symptoms. It is literally a slow, quiet subtraction that doesn't say, hey, guess what? You've lost some muscle. But you start to realize it when you go to stand up from a chair and you're a little more wobbly, especially if you're, older, or walking distances feel a little bit different. Maybe your body's a little more tired. Maybe taking the stairs feel different. Maybe you can't open up that jar of tomato sauce, right? Like it's these little things that start creeping in. Maybe you can't support your weight as well when you're going from the floor or to standing. Like it's these tiny, tiny things. Or maybe it's a scan. Maybe you've done a body scan that shows, visceral fat, muscle, and all that kind of stuff. And it takes, you can't undo that, right? You have to put in the effort and months of effort. So for anybody that's older, are you running around after your grandkids and you can't get off the floor like you used to? These are very, very real things. So I'm not saying this to, make you feel like, oh, I haven't done it. What the hell, or that it's careless, or again, like you've already blown it. I'm really telling you because I have sat across from so many people when they feel it. By the time, that they're starting to notice, oh, gee, what's happened? And, now what would have taken 3 months, 6 months, a year of intervention to bring in the muscle, it takes 2 years of rebuilding. Like, this is how long it takes. It's not, we think we get into the gym and it's 6 to 8 weeks, maybe to start. But again, if you're in menopause, you're in perimenopause, like, building muscle is much, much harder. The hormones, the lack of hormones make this whole landscape so different. So, the most important thing that I can tell you is the version of you sitting here right now feeling fine is in the best possible position to prevent that muscle loss, right? Not the version of you 6 months down the road when you're starting to see these changes. And, here's what makes the difference from this to some of the other like overt health risks, right? Like if you hear about the thyroid cancer or whatever, pancreatitis, okay? Muscle is not like giving you a warning. It's not asking your permission, right? When you're in a significant calorie deficit, which we know you are on these medications, your body is going to pull energy from fat and from muscle, unless you have something actively protecting that muscle. So we know a real portion of this weight loss, and it's close to a third. That's a lot. Think about that, okay? It's a third of muscle loss in nearly half of the people who are on this who are not doing any kind of weights, right? So it's lean tissue. And that's important because muscle is not like fat, right? You can lose fat and regain it relatively easy, for better or for worse, right? If you're that person who takes a long time to lose it, whatever that looks like, but it goes on and off fairly easy, okay? But muscle, especially again, once you're past your 20s and 30s, it is slower to build than it is to lose, right? And every additional year, we know that you lose significant, like 2% of your muscle every decade of life. So like that's a lot. And this is why metabolism slows down, because you're losing that. So, again, especially through menopause and perimenopause, every month that you wait to make this intentional change is a month that you're borrowing against the future version of yourself who has to work harder to get the same result that you would right now. So, this is not a scare tactic. This truly is the math. The window where this is easy to prevent is open, right? It won't stay open indefinitely. And it does not reopen on its own, meaning, unless you actively do something, it's not coming back. And look, I'm going to be honest, right? Because again, I don't say this to say, oh, I'm right, okay? Because being right doesn't make the muscle come back faster. Right? But I say it because I've watched this happen enough times that almost staying quiet about it feels like malpractice to me. Okay. I will tell you so I'm thinking about two different stories. Okay. Two women came in on GLP-1s, both feeling, great. They didn't have the same exact amount of weight to lose, but that doesn't matter, right? They were both losing weight. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Their practitioners didn't even bring up the whole muscle conversation. I mean, they said you need to go exercise, but I think most people think exercise is like go walk. They're not told that you've got to go do some resistance training. But one of the ladies who has worked with me before in the past knew, we've talked about this. We've talked about this in her journey. She knew that resistance training was going to be important. She had done it. She had slid off the path a little bit. So she did it a little bit, but nothing really significant. But she knew that on this medicine, and we had talked about it, she needed to be doing resistance training, right? She knew that she needed to change her meal planning. We hadn't really even been formally working together at that point, but we had a conversation, okay? And so she was doing 2 strength training sessions a week. That's it, right? But 18 months later, her body composition scan showed that she had kept a significant portion of the lean mass through the process. She hadn't lost the typical 1/3. She lost a little bit, but certainly not what she would have had she done nothing. And so the other woman didn't do that, right? Not because she didn't care, right? But nothing was like she just didn't, because so many people don't, because there was no urgency around it. And then after she finished, okay, so it was like a couple years, right? It was recent. She's in my office asking why she feels so much weaker, why standing, sitting off of the floor was so much harder, why she was losing weight, but somehow it seemed to slow down metabolically. It was different. Like she was trying to come off the medication and she couldn't, because she couldn't eat the same. So this is a real life difference, right? So here's what I want you to take from this in real terms, right? This isn't about fear. I don't do that. I really don't. It is about timing. The categories that protect your muscles specifically: adequate protein, resistance training. And I'm not talking about just like lifting weights. I mean, look, I love that a lot of you are working out in your house and you're doing some of this work. But if you're not doing progressive resistance training, and I'm going to tell you, I love Dr. Tina Moore. If you guys haven't seen her stuff, I'm going to give her a plug here, not for any other reason. I mean, she's not a practicing practitioner now, but Dr. Tina Moore has also done podcasts on this and YouTube videos on this, and she's brilliant. And she talks about this, and one of her recent videos talked about, if you're not making an ugly grunting face when you're lifting, like, right, like we look ugly when we're lifting, you're not doing it right. That's not progressive overload. So I think about that while I'm in the gym, because I'm like, am I making an ugly face? Probably, but you do need to do resistance training where you're progressively overloading the weight. 10 pounds indefinitely is not, it'll create endurance in your muscle. It's not going to create growth that you need for metabolism. So again, bringing in the resistance training and sequencing it around the medication, like that'll work exponentially better the earlier on you bring this in to the mix, because you're going to be working with your body instead of trying to reverse, right? Instead of trying to play catch up, again, especially after menopause, okay? And yes, protein has to be intentional, not for any other reason than we need to bring that in to help support the muscle development. But, the appetite suppression also makes it hard to hit your targets without having a plan. And what we don't realize, and this is really, really, really important, if you're nothing else, protein is actually most effective when it has somewhere to go, like rebuilding muscle. You think of it like this: protein is what your body uses to build the muscle, okay? It tells, resistance training tells your body actually what it needs to do. Without the signal from the resistance training, your muscle doesn't get primed to use the protein you're eating. So your body will just treat the protein like any other calorie. It'll either burn it for energy, but if you're eating more than you actually use because you're not using the muscle, then you're going to excrete it. Some get stored, not typically, right? This is where we start to see fatty liver, not so much from the protein, but definitely from carbs and overt fats. So the whole point is that eating protein doesn't build muscle by itself. It needs resistance training to give it a job to do. Without that, it's not doing anything special. It's just calories. So this is why resistance training needs to start now, not once something already feels different, because muscle responds to being used consistently. And knowing where you stand, right? Having data instead of guessing should happen now, because guess what? That answer is much simpler now rather than later when everything will get more complicated. So look, I'm not going to give you a generic number, a generic plan, because guess what? It's different for everybody. Everybody's like, oh, I need to have a pound of protein, blah, blah, blah. I mean, so many women are over consuming protein. They can't even eat all of it. Okay. And the generic advice is, it's wasted because everyone's different. I always talk about personalized nutritional medicine is just that. You've got to look at your own biology. But what I want you to walk away with is the exercise might be hard, okay? But it's not as hard as dealing with a busted metabolism after the fact, because that is what's going to happen. And that is hard. Okay. So this is why in the Beyond the Shot program, we look at muscle. One of the first things we talk about is this, not because it's a scary part of the journey. Okay. But it's the part where early action, like you got to take action early on because it'll make the single biggest difference in your progress. And look, if this has made you uncomfortable, if it's made you think, then I've done my job, kind of, right? Because I want you to know it's not too late. I will tell you the easiest thing you're going to do. And if you need help, this is why we're here to support you. This is why there's a community. People who know what they're talking about instead of these Fitspo influencers who have no clue, okay? Muscle isn't the only place these patterns show up, okay? Where something gets ignored until it's not quiet anymore. So next week, we're going to talk about your gut, the symptoms that you're maybe waving off because like it's just part of what this process is. But these symptoms are trying to tell you something before they turn into something much harder, because we know that the impact to the gut is pretty profound. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you send us your comments, your questions. Check out the webinar we have on the Beyond the Shot, because it'll really enlighten you as to what we're going to be talking about. And get out there and lift some weights. Make it a great day, everyone.